So you're hearing these two titles thrown around all the time, right? Data analyst and data engineer. They sound kind of the same, but trust me, they are worlds apart. In this explainer, we're going to break it all down, what each one really does, and more importantly, which path might be the perfect one for you. Let's get right into it.
I think this quote just nails it. Analysts understand, engineers build. It really is that simple. One role is all about finding the story hidden inside the numbers. The other is about building the entire library that holds all those stories. We're going to spend the rest of our time unpacking exactly what that means.
And here's how we'll do it. First, we'll hit the core difference. Then, we'll walk through a typical day for each. After that, we'll look at the tools they use, map out their career paths, and finally, help you figure out which one just feels right for you.
Okay, so let's start at the very top. What is the fundamental mission here? What's the main reason a company even hires these people in the first place?
Think of the data analyst as a detective, but for data. Their entire job is to dig into a giant pile of information and pull out the answers to really important business questions. Stuff like, why did our sales suddenly drop last month? Or which of our ads are actually working? They're the ones who translate all those numbers into a story that a business can actually use.
The data engineer, though, they're the architect and the construction crew. See, before an analyst can even begin to look at the data, an engineer has to build the digital highways, the pipelines, that bring all that data together. Their goal is all about creating a super solid, reliable, and fast infrastructure so the data is always ready to go.
And that really is the heart of it. The analyst is focused on the end product, the insights, the charts, the reports. The engineer is focused on the factory that makes it all possible, the infrastructure, the architecture. It's the classic difference between the person who analyzes the what and the person who builds the how.
Okay, so we get the big picture, but what are they actually doing all day? Tapping away at their keyboards? Let's zoom in and see what a typical day looks like.
And right away, you can see how different their worlds are. An analyst's work is, analytical. Their final output is something you can see and interact with, like a dashboard or a report. An engineer's work is pure, hardcore engineering, and their output is the invisible foundation, the data pipelines and warehouses that make everything else possible.
So a day in the life of an analyst is this really cool mix of being a detective and an artist. They're digging through data, cleaning it up, writing SQL queries to ask it questions, and then turning those answers into visuals, into dashboards. It really shows their unique spot. They need the tech skills to find the insights, but also the people skills to explain what they found to the bosses.
An engineer's day? It's all about building stuff. They're constructing these things called ETL pipelines. Think of them like automated plumbing systems for data. They design these massive digital storage units called data warehouses, and they spend a ton of time just making sure everything is running fast, running reliably, and is totally secure. It's pure construction.
All right, so it's pretty obvious that these two very different jobs are going to require two very different toolkits. Let's pop the hood and look at the specific tech that each role is using every single day.
An analyst's toolkit is all about manipulation and communication. SQL is their absolute go-to for grabbing data. Then they'll use something like Excel or Python libraries like Pandas to slice it and dice it. And finally, tools like Power BI or Tableau are their paintbrushes for turning all that analysis into a story that people can actually understand.
Now, the engineer's toolkit. This is the heavy machinery. Yeah, they use SQL and Python too, but at a much deeper level. They're also working with massive data processing engines like Spark and automation tools like Airflow to keep all their data pipelines running on schedule. And they build all of this inside huge cloud platforms like AWS or Google Cloud. These are the power tools of the data world.
So we know what they do, and we know the tools they use. But what about the job itself? Let's talk careers. How hard is it to get started? What's the pay like? And where can you go from there? This is a big one, especially if you're looking to break into the field. The data analyst role is, generally speaking, a more accessible starting point. The learning curve is a bit more forgiving because it's more about using tools and less about deep, complex coding. The engineering path? It's a much steeper climb. It really demands a strong programming and systems background from the get-go.
And that difference in technical difficulty? Well, it tends to show up in the paycheck. Data engineers typically earn more. It really just comes down to supply and demand for a very specialized, very complex skill set.
So if you start as an analyst, where can you go? Well, a pretty common path is to become a senior expert.
then maybe move into management and lead a team of other analysts. Or even transition into a more advanced role like a data scientist. It's all about going deeper into the analytical side of things. The engineering path often leads to more and more technical responsibility. You could grow into a senior engineer, and from there become a data architect who designs the entire company's data ecosystem. Or you could become an engineering manager, leading a team of other builders. It's a path of growing technical leadership.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. And now we get to the most important part of all, taking everything we've talked about and figuring out where you fit into the picture. Which of these paths feels like it could be yours?
All right, this is where you gotta look in the mirror. We've seen what they do, the tools they use, the careers they have. So let's connect the dots. Where do your gut feelings and your natural talents seem to line up?
You might be a budding data analyst if you just love the idea of solving puzzles, especially business puzzles. If turning a messy spreadsheet into a clean, beautiful chart that tells a story sounds like fun, this could be for you. It's also a great fit if you want coding to be a tool in your belt, not your entire job. Plus, it's usually the fastest way to get your foot in the door of the data world.
But if you're the kind of person who genuinely loves to code, who gets a real kick out of building complex systems from scratch, then the data engineer path might be calling your name. If you love working behind the scenes, making things efficient, and you're fascinated by cloud technology and how it all connects, this is definitely where you'll want to be.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to this one simple choice. Are you the person who wants to find the story hidden in the data, or are you the person who wants to build the system that delivers it? Both are absolutely vital. And honestly, the right path is just the one that gets you excited.